Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome back to TMR's Master Advisor series. Today is April 1st, so happy April Fool's Day, and also happy opening day to all the baseball fans on the call. This is episode 28 of the series, and we have a great guest and a great guest host today, but I want to make a few announcements before I pass it over to them. The first is that speaker view is going to be the best viewing experience for all, and the chat is open on the bottom right. And we're going to do our best to grab questions as we go along today. For all who missed my talk our last session with Acta's Wendy Paradis and Asta Zane Kirby, you can get the full recording on our YouTube page, which is www.youtube.com/travel market report. I'll drop the link in the chat in a little bit. That page is home to a lot of content for us, so please like and subscribe and comment on all those videos. That is very helpful for us to grow this community of travel advisors. And I also want to announce that our next session will be April 15th. We'll be back here with Jill Labar. She's a really great travel advisor. She's going to speak to us about what she thinks is the most important thing for advisors to remember when using social media, and that's being authentic and being yourself. Jill's been a featured speaker on a number of travel industry events, and we're very fortunate and very excited that she's going to be volunteering her time to talk to us later this month. So I'll get the link to register in the chat in a little bit, and we'll send it out as we wrap up here today. Okay. So today, I'm very happy and very excited to welcome our guest host, Jennifer Wilson-Buttigieg, who's returning after being the first guest on this series way back last year and a guest host for 3 episodes last summer. And our guest speaker today, Dave Hilfman. Dave is the former interim director of GBTA and the former SVP of worldwide sales with United Airlines. He's a 30-year plus veteran of the airline industry, a career that began in 1981 as a campus sales representative for Eastern Airlines at the University of South Florida. Dave's here to speak about corporate travel and much, much more. I feel very lucky to welcome both Dave and Jennifer to the show. Jennifer was actually my first guest on our new podcast, which is, I'm going to put a shameless plug for that, which is premiering today on our YouTube channel, which I'll drop the link in the chat in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and pass this over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Dan. Welcome, everybody. And I think we can probably get that photo of Dave and me down from an ASTA event many years ago in Reno. But before we kick it off, I just want to say welcome to everybody. I can't believe that we're 12 to 13 months into this crazy COVID pandemic. I want to thank Dan. I want to thank Anne-Marie, and most importantly, the TMR family. They do an incredible job of representing and being the voice of the travel advisor. And how could I not say yes to being able to moderate and participate in a thoughtful conversation with not only an industry icon, a colleague, but more importantly, a friend. So a warm welcome to Dave Hilfman. Hi, Dave.
Well, Jen, thank you for the spectacular intro. And I'm going to add my thanks as well to Dan, Anne-Marie, who we go so far back, almost as far back as you and I. Of course, the TMR family and everybody involved in doing such a great job promoting the travel business, especially in light of all that we've been through together in the last year. And to everybody that has dialed in, zoomed in, so appreciate the fact that folks are willing to take some time and hopefully have some laughs, catch up on some industry issues, and just enjoy some time together, because in the end, it's all about, the people you get to spend a little time with, and hopefully you can appreciate every minute, right?
Absolutely. And I show that we have about 163 on. I know there were, am I getting feedback here? A little bit. I know that there is a competing event going on right now with Matthew Upchurch and Virtuoso and Gloria of WTTC. So many people signed up, and we'll listen to the recording later. But the goal for today really is a thoughtful conversation, just as if you were and I was sitting in a bar, having a cocktail or a morning breakfast, which I'm known for. And we're going to sort of say, where are we today? What are the lessons we've learned, and what are some of the shared experiences? So, Dave, let me jump right on in and say, wow, where do you want to start? What have you personally missed most during COVID, personally and professionally? 2 quick answers.
Listen, it's all about getting together with, my fellow humans out there, and particularly so many of my friends in the industry. So professionally and personally, I can't separate it, candidly. And it'd always be about getting together with friends and industry colleagues. And granted, a lot of you on here, we spent time at pretty swanky industry events, be it some sporting gig or some concert. all those things that make life so much fun. So those are the things I miss most, because it's, just all about getting the chance to hug people and all that kind of stuff. And that's been gone for a year. And I understand for all the right reasons, but that's what I miss, Jen. And I miss to see you.
Absolutely. It is personal connection. This is an industry all of us are so passionate about, and we miss connecting with each other as family, as colleagues on a business trip. Our entire life was flipped upside down. And yours in particular, I know you recently got married to a lovely Australian woman, Suzanne, and then you have an 18-month-old, yikes, toddler, Jordan, who you haven't seen except via Zoom. And thank goodness there is Zoom for that. And you have Marshall, who's 17 and a junior in high school. And your wife and youngest son went back to Australia and you haven't seen them. So, yikes, what have you guys done? How have you connected? Help share that story with me for a moment.
I know it's kind of insane. And it's an example of, the profound impacts of COVID and this pandemic worldwide. And a lot of you on here have heard this story. So thanks for indulging me. But I can at least give you a little bit of the update. So I get very blessed, met an extraordinary woman, Suzanne von Sally, who was, knew her through my parents, actually, the whole family, her mom and dad, her grandparents, ties back to Iowa, where most folks know I grew up, and in fact spent a lot of time. I was commuting from Chicago to Iowa City. Anyway, Suzanne's family, a lot of roots in Iowa, as well as she grew up in Australia. That's where her mom and dad, ended up raising 4 kids. She was, one of them. So anyway, I won't go into all the great dating details because Jen, you told me I had to, be very above board here. But suffice to say, I'm in love. She's amazing. I clearly way over married, and got married
a second time, because I remember.
I know. Yes, December of 2018, and I think we had as a honeymoon baby because along came Jordan in August of 2019. So anyway. Suzanne and Jordy here in San Diego, where we have a home. And on March 1st of 2020, Suzanne says, COVID, we'd all heard about this, right? China, there was some issues that we knew about what was going on and a little bit in Asia and some other places, but we didn't really think a whole lot about it. And Suzanne was going to go down with Jordan to go see her mom and dad and brothers and sister for a month. And she flies down on March 1st. Obviously, the world really changed on us about two to 3 weeks later, right? I bet everybody remembers it. Wasn't March 13th or 14th, right? And initially, we could have got her back because they hadn't shut the borders. Jordan and Suzanne have dual citizenship, but we weren't sure. We were like, I don't know, should we bring a baby back on a 16-hour flight? Just stay there. You're in great hands, and your mom and dad are having a ball with Jordan. But then the borders did close, and it was going to take like the U.S. ambassador to get this worked out. So anyway,
which you probably could have reached out to, but
probably. In fact, I know the U.S. and the Australian ambassador to the United States, hockey. But I'm telling you, there was going to be all kinds of issues to try to get this accomplished. And then we just realized, they're in great shape. Australia, obviously, just very, very minimal cases. And it's been a year later. They are coming back next month, finally. I did assume Suzanne maybe had a boyfriend or two.
Okay. Mr. Hilfman, we had a prep call about this, and we are going to stay above.
All right. Anyway, they're coming back. I'm excited about it, obviously.
Did you nightly FaceTime? How did you connect? Because you missed some milestones for Jordy.
Yes, I did. I mean, listen, they're doing great. It was all FaceTime, like 3 times a day. Jordan's now 19 months. I missed him walking. I got to see all of this, but
not in person.
Not in person. And so, you want to talk about a pretty profound impact. On the other hand, like you said, I was lucky. A lot of you on this call have met Marshall. Marshall is 17 years old. He's junior Coronado High School and, doing great. he had to supervise me, during this, pandemic scenario. And,
I can
maybe I've done a little
only
supervising.
imagine he's the responsible one in your household. So
Of
you have
course
an
he is.
19-month-old and a junior in high school. How is it submitting applications both to like preschools and colleges at the same time?
Yeah, I know. Pretty bizarre, isn't it? But I do feel so young. I was actually a fairly old dad the first time around at 42, and obviously at 58 for the second time is pretty amazing. But the guy there, Marshall is knee deep in that college application process. And thankfully, I've got him a tutor for a law student from UCLA is helping out, and he's looking at all kinds of schools throughout Southern California, University of Iowa. Thankfully, I do know a graduate from Harvard, Miss Buttigieg. And so, I might have to just, ask for you to write a letter. I know.
I'd be happy to have a conversation with Marshall again, and we can actually take you out of the equation. But what I want to be able to do here is to say, managing everything you just talked about and shared with us, we're desperate to have leadership today. I mean, on all levels, personally, professionally, in travel, in government, etc. And as leaders, we have to set the standard. And I love the phrase that Dan used earlier. We have to be authentic. We have to be ourselves, which you and I do pretty well naturally. But what I want to talk about is, as a leader, you sort of traded your family off for the last year. You jumped in, GBTA needed help, and you became the interim executive director. How'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And what's one big takeaway that you can share with everybody?
Yeah. Well, some people would say I was insane. I think Mr. Dane actually called and questioned my sanity. But the fact was, you're taking over a big job in corporate travel in the middle of pandemic, which obviously has had some challenges at its leadership level. And the fact of the matter is, I thought, you know what? I love this industry. I care deeply about the people in it. I mean, it's been so good to me and my family. We'll always, appreciate the airline industry, the TMCs, all our corporate clients, all the different suppliers on the hotel, car rental. I mean, just go right down the line. Everybody involved in this. And when I got calls from a lot of top corporate folks within the travel industry that said, listen, we could really use you. I know it's in the middle of a pandemic, and some had heard about the story that you're kind of there just with Marshall, and your wife and kid are stuck down in Australia. I know it's a bit of a sacrifice. I said it's the right thing to do. And Jen, I will tell you, and I know everybody here can appreciate, the association's different than the corporate world, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But the fact is, you know what? When you care about something so deeply, you can make a difference. You can help heal some wounds, and you think you can provide, hopefully, some hope. You're going to jump at it. I did. I feel very grateful for the opportunity. Wow, it was a real grind. It really was, because it's a tough gig in the best of times. I feel very satisfied and proud of the work that everybody within GBTA and all our members and sponsors and all the folks involved. I mean, I really think we accomplished a lot. And of course, ultimately, just getting Suzanne Neufang as our new CEO.
I look forward to getting to know her, but it sounds like you were the perfect person with the ability to sort of unify. And sometimes these leaders, it's communication. And I forget the name of it. Wasn't it a Monday morning message from Dave, or what did you start as that best practice?
Yeah, it was the Monday morning memo. And you're right, Jen. I mean, for everything really in business life, it all starts with the communication. I know you have to hopefully have good thoughts and substance, but if you can't articulate it, if you can't communicate it, written, verbal, however, then you probably aren't going to be as successful as you could. And I knew people were starving for information, but I will tell you, the first month, I really did what Suzanne's doing today, which is a listening tour. I mean, you want to get everybody's insights, right? They're going to have their cathartic moments. And trust me, there was plenty of folks who have very definitive thoughts on GBTA and either what had happened in that year or years before, and good and bad. And so I listened a lot, and that's how you start. That's usually how a good leader, is able to change, right?
It's critical, and it's recognizing that these are moments in time. So I'm actually going to jump out a little further and say, I know your name still is synonymous with Continental. I mean, many times I actually thought you were Continental, but I was young, I was new to the industry, and I had to get to know these airline executives. So you helped bridge Continental and United through the merger, and you had executive level positions there. And then obviously you were interim with this trade association. How did it differ? Help explain to us how it was different. Oh,
Well,
and I
thank
see
you.
the wonderful backdrop.
I love that. Obviously, United returning to JFK, which we had left about 5 years ago, and at the time for all the right reasons. Although, you know, my old boss, who I love and think is amazing, Scott Kirby, who's now the CEO, of course, United. You know, it was at the time, you know, the decision was made to do it and consolidate everything at Newark Liberty. But it's great to see United back at JFK. So nice plug for my old employer there. And I know they appreciate everybody's support, and especially as we're restarting. But back to the airline and then corporate and versus association. Well, obviously, I love my time at Continental and at United. I always like to refer to it Continental. I had a boss that used to call that all the time. And I was like, is it Continental or is it Continental? I'm not really sure. Anyway, just, you know, amazing run, almost 35 years between that and, you know, tack on another 4 at Eastern. Which I loved every second of it. But, you know, I knew in the time after being on the road a couple hundred days a year for literally 14 years as I was doing the worldwide sales job. And it was just talk about timing, because people would often call me last year and said, how is it possible you retired at the end of 2018 out of the airline business? I mean, I said, blind luck, divine intervention. I don't know.
Probably a blend of both.
Yeah, probably. But what I'll tell you, so I loved every minute, and I'm so proud of, you know, my carriers. Frankly, I'm proud of the entire airline industry and the travel industry in general for what everybody's done through this last year to survive.
I agree with you completely on that. And I'm going to jump around a little because I think what you just said, having traveled several hundred days in the past every year, many people on this call did. That was part of our lifestyle. So I actually want to sort of jump to theoretically question 7, the topic at hand today. What's your forecast for business travel in the next 2 years? I keep hearing of its demise, that it's never coming back. And I want to sort of start at a top level to say, you know, what do you really think? And I know we have a couple slides that just came hot off the press from WTTC, which I was on a task force for COVID on Wednesdays, which brings the entire industry together. And I'm going to let that slide sit up there for a moment. But Dave, what's your forecast for business travel?
My forecast for business travel is a very healthy return over multi-year time frame. So as everybody on the call probably knows, and, you know, we did a lot of research and a lot of the surveys throughout GBTA's membership, which is over 9,000 strong between buyers, suppliers, whole India folks. You know, the global corporate travel industry is almost 1.43 billion. That was the number in 2019. Obviously, it took a huge whack last year, almost, you know, 80% if you looked at from second quarter through the end of the year. If you included first quarter, which was actually pretty decent, right? Because COVID the impact didn't come until kind of mid to late March. You know, it ended up being about 50% for the full run rate of the year. But that back, you know, those last 3 quarters were hammered. I believe, based on all the insight, I think we'll see this, you know, we'll see probably a 20% improvement, 21 versus 20. But I think if you see the pace of return by 2024, I think you could be back up to $1.4 trillion. I have no doubt. And I base that on history is the best predictor of future behavior.
And that is definitely, I'd love us to switch to the next slide because actually, let's go to the next one for a quick moment. Because when you talk history being the best predictor, I mean, this industry is resilient. If we didn't know that after 9/11, and if we didn't know that after the global financial crisis, we certainly have learned it after the last 12 to 14 months. And yes, 9/11, we had planes in the sky 4 days later, and it was more of a U-shaped. Global financial crisis, more of a V, and impacted, obviously, the United States very hard, but the rest of the world. And we know where we've been in 2020. And I think the question is, how do we move forward? Because we know we will. I don't think anyone has specific stats. There are good indicators like TSA, X number of days over 1 million travelers, those are touch points. But I want us to actually go back one slide. And I want us to jump in for a moment when we think about business travel. And there are two things that this slide on sectors really resonate for me: leisure versus business, and domestic versus international. And I didn't know, Dave, if you want to, I love your enthusiasm. You always are a glasses half full kind of person. How do you think we're going to start to come back?
Well, first off, again, Jen, I try not to be, Pollyanna about this stuff, more than a cheerleader than I already am. But the fact is, I've been around this industry long enough. I have seen the traumatic shocks to the business. I get it. This is 10X, right? And I know you've had that same experience. You've seen this, but people have to get back together in person. You can only do that so many times on a camera before you're going to get people traveling. They're going to do it safely. The minute you steal an account from somebody because you showed up in person and these folks have been Zooming away, the CFO goes, oh yeah, maybe we should have gone ahead and reinvested in that. It happened. We've seen it time and time again. And so that's why I have tremendous faith. I know this may not snap back next year. It didn't in the other cases either. It took several years, but we obviously know, for all of the reasons that Jen, I know you've articulated before, about domestic versus international. Domestic will come back first. That's because we still have border closures. We need to have some standardization in some of the testing and quarantine scenarios. But in leisure, is obviously we've already seen this demand. Everybody on the call knows this. But I'm already hearing about people back out on the road. There's people who have already been to some conferences. They've been a little smaller. So I have no doubt.
A little bit of a hybrid. Let's actually take those slides down. We can certainly give them out to people later or load them in the chat. But I mean, I think when we think about corporate people, there's big corporate, then there's like SME corporate. We think budgets and travel. In every crisis, we're somewhere between FedEx and food service with a procurement person. Right. And budgets get slashed. Then there are RFPs, the 1,000 questions. Then we tie in expense. And do we scale up or scale down? What do you recommend some of our listeners to even think about right now?
Well, I think the investment in travel is shown it's paid off time and time again. And you can lay out the fact in history, people that get together in person, even if they're on a patio, having 6 feet apart, even if they're still wearing a mask, you're more impactful, that human touch. And you know what? Most CFOs, they appreciate that. They understand it. Sure, they've been enjoying some savings, but ultimately, it's all about margin. It's all about long-term business gains. And so if you're a travel advisor, I'm hoping you're recommending to your corporate clients, obviously promoting the fact that suppliers have spent hundreds of millions, probably in the billions, ultimately worldwide at every supplier, of enhancing their products, cleaning protocols, all the things that have been talked about this last year, which is all about making it safe for our travelers. The one issue I think we still have to worry about is, again, some of the standardization of, just knowing predictability for business travelers. They need to know, am I going to get stuck somewhere? Wait, what are the issues? What are the requirements? Those are the things that I think we still need to work with our governments. I think everybody probably knows that on here, maybe is already helping in that regard. The other thing is risk mitigation for corporations. I would like to see some of the upcoming legislation about some risk mitigation waivers for companies, because if they're doing everything right and getting their folks out traveling, but somebody still shockingly gets COVID, there's certain limits in liability, and it's happened for other things. So I'm hoping that'll play out in the industry.
And you touched on so many things. Right now I know there are like 20 different digital passports in the marketplace, and we're encouraging that not one is going to take lead, but it's how the entire ecosystem talks to each other to allow us to hit this restart button. There are certainly insurance providers out there. If you get sick and need to be medical repatriation with COVID, that's an opportunity as well. But I think people even want to know where to start. Is it communication? Is it having that advisor, that independent contractor, reach out and just say, let me update you on what we've done. Let me update you on what some of your prior travel partners have done to help educate.
I think you're right and spot on, Jen. And most of the folks that I've talked with, they're so good about getting the information. It's not always easy because there is a lot of information. So sometimes it's hard to hone in, but places like GBTA, ASTA, right? I mean, your agency, your TMC is one of the greatest. You've isolated and outlined. I mean, you could go to Chris Dane's organization. You could just write down WTTC, right? Everybody has got some tools out there that can provide great information, concise, and there you can take that and update it. It's all about the communication. If you can get out, take some time. Actually, people are up for discussions. They're excited about the future travel. Even if they think it's 1, 3, 6 months out, I can't tell you, and I know, I think Dan even mentioned and sent a note up, people are excited talking about travel. And I will tell you, and Jen, what am I telling? I'm singing to the choir because you've probably seen this. Leisure, people that have gotten inoculated, right, they're back out. I mean, they're booking stuff. And Chris, I'm sure you've seen this. So many others on here. I mean, it's great to see. And in fact, a lot of TMCs are probably having a hybrid of business there, right? They may have been focused purely on corporate or business travel, but I'm hoping they're taking advantage and also booking some of that leisure because it's coming back pretty strong. I mean, California, I can't believe how many people are back in town now, and I'm seeing a lot of tourists.
I think there is that opportunity, and we talk about this, and the phrase has been out there for a couple of years, bleisure. And, you know, it used to be if you were in London or Paris for a meeting, you might add on a weekend, you might celebrate, see a friend. I think the message now is for leaders in the industry to say, this is even more important than ever because they're wondering, do they have to quarantine? Do they have to have how many COVID tests in X number of days? And I think it's going to become iterative over time once most people become vaccinated.
Absolutely. No, I hope people, the bleisure it's just a fact. I think it's a great opportunity. And candidly, I'm even hoping what happens is people are out flying around for leisure, start to come to a realization, hey, I can do this for business again. And in fact, might even combine a little bit like we used to be really good at. Then it was just all, hey, just go out and you're doing your business trips and in and out in a day, maybe a couple, whatever. But I'd like to think that people will feel more and more comfortable about traveling for business. And as people start to make their way back to offices, and we're seeing it already in a lot of places, a lot's yet that hasn't.
It's not New York. I know a lot of people on this call and in different organizations and associations have joked until we get some of the New York offices opened, people aren't going to be traveling for business. So I know you and I talked about this sort of as colleagues and friends throughout over the last couple months. You got to take that first trip. The first time you get back to an airport, the first time you realize in most airports, you don't have to hand your driver's license or ID over anymore. You insert it. So it's like taking money out of an ATM card machine. There are different processes. If you're TSA pre-check, they don't even ask you the question because they don't want your laptop or 311 out. Have people are starting to say, let's drive somewhere first, let's fly somewhere second. Have you been out on a plane yet?
Yeah, so I'm one of the folks. I mean, I just have tremendous faith in the system. Try to make sure that I've follow all protocols. But I traveled every month since the pandemic started last March. I will tell. I was at the probably very end of April, all domestic. The issue was I couldn't get down to Australia. I was going to end up having to quarantine for 2 weeks,
right.
And then I stayed a couple weeks. I couldn't leave Marshall for a month. No. I couldn't get my mom or sister or but. Bottom line is domestic every month. I've been so impressed by what I've seen done by the hoteliers, the car rentals, the airlines, the terminal facilities. People, hey, we need travel to get back. And so everybody understands safety and security is everything. And they've done a hell of a job, in my personal opinion. And I hope everybody will take the opportunity. Still, got to do all the right things, but
right. Got to wear a mask, got to get tested, got to get vaccinated. We have to figure out which digital app we're going to use. But I want to go back a second. And I'm not looking to say this as an unholy question, so to speak. You don't have a horse in this race. You're not tied to any one particular airline or vendor at the moment. But what I would say is over the last couple months, particularly the last year of COVID, we've recognized the real value of the advisor. We've recognized that they work tirelessly as an advocate, that they solve the problem, sometimes being compensated, sometimes not being compensated. We know I've been around long enough, you've been around long enough to see commission caps. New entrants don't even know what they are because
Right.
service fees came into play. Knowing that there is such an increased demand for leisure right now, and knowing that that's non-contracted business like corporations, et cetera, what do you see the role of the advisor? And do you think airlines might actually return to pay for performance and full commission for advisors? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I've always been a huge believer in the distribution system, and it's like, I think the service provided, the care, the comprehensive nature of what, from the actual transactional work to the duty of care side of it, to just finding the best deals and handling so many of the details. I think it's been quite extraordinary. That doesn't mean I haven't always agreed with everything. And, Jen, you and I would.
You and I've certainly had some banters over a nickel versus a quarter.
We certainly did, but we were always aligned about the value of the travel agency community. And, you can buy, that's segmented into whether you're TMC or you're pure leisure travel advisor, you're bleisure, whatever it might be, had wholesalers, consolidators. I always believe in compensation, and how that might be done, obviously, I think is up to each supplier in pay for performance. Often it would be, maybe the commissions themselves, when it was just standardized, wasn't always the best answer for the suppliers, not just necessarily airlines, but ultimately people get paid for performing. And I think that absolutely will forever be here. And I think that the advisors that show they can preference suppliers because they earn it and deserve it, should get compensated higher. So I think that's something you will see. I think suppliers out there are ready to pay as appropriate, and they will. And
so many suppliers who've been showcased on TMR over the last year actually have stepped out there and made some bold decisions. They've decided to do commission bonuses on cruises. They've decided to prepay an incentive on a tour booking like Colette. They have creatively talked about paying 2 weeks after or 2 weeks before a trip occurs with like TravCorp. So I look at this entire ecosystem again as an opportunity to say where are we today and what's needed in the marketplace today.
Yeah, and I have a question for you, Jen. So you have seen many programs presented to you over the years in all different kinds of marketplace conditions. So what is the most creative one? You mentioned a couple examples, but is there one great creative program that some supplier brought to you that might be helpful for anybody that's listening in on this, whether they're a supplier or a travel advisor?
Okay, and that's great. This is not a pre-planned question, as you probably can tell by my smile, but Dave likes to keep me on my toes. So I would actually say we as an industry need to be far more nimble and far more flexible. Anything that we produced in 2018, 2019, anything that we as a company over the last 40 years have produced at Valerie Wilson Travel, it's almost a reset button. We have to behave like a startup. And I would say to any supplier right now, just because we have this long contract and multi-page document that's existed in the past, we need to break it down into small increments right now and look at it on a monthly basis, look at it on a quarterly basis. Very few people are signing a contract for a full year right now unless it's an extension. We need to look at the tools that are important. We need to look at the sales support and waivers and favors. We need to be creative. I mean, I will give you the very specific example that VWT used to be 70% international and 75% front of the plane. And we are top right-hand corner high yield. That's not existing right now. Hotels are our number one travel type because of the pandemic. So I think we both are golfers. We need to play the ball where it lies.
Yes.
Not just look at what contracts have been in the past. That would be my little bit of tip there. Now we're going to jump right back to, let's say you were Secretary of Transportation.
Your cousin, Mr. Buttigieg, Secretary
Yes.
Buttigieg?
Not cousin Pete. We're not related. A lot of people have asked me that. What would your first priority be to help global travel? And I think there's a Travel Again slide that might be available.
Yeah, I mean, the Secretary of Transportation, who I'm a fan because I'm hopeful he's going to get a lot done, clearly extremely bright, articulate, and I think it's some of the standardization. We have to get people where they can get back out and travel the world. So we have to get these borders opened up, and whatever that takes from whether these digital passports, whatever the United States government can do in discussing with all the governments around the planet, and particularly those that are our biggest trading partners, probably our biggest vacation destinations. We have to find a way to standardize and normalize so there's predictability. And there's a whole litany of things I know they're looking at in that regard. And like I said, I don't know if there's not one digital passport solution, but if we could have some standards so everybody can go to the same thing, we can get the planet opened up a lot faster. So I love that. Plus, obviously, this infrastructure bill, we'll see how that gets played out. But, I've been a huge proponent, not shockingly, in the travel business. There's so much we could do with this next gen, which has been never gen on the airports and the redesign of our skies. And they have been making incremental progress. But if we could get the final push, you could just take so many, like a flight wouldn't have to be scheduled at 2 hours and 30 minutes to Chicago. It'd probably be an hour and a half like it should be.
Right.
New lanes in the sky and using new technologies still safely. You could reduce fuel burn, and the productivity would improve. So, and the secretary already talked about that, and even the president talked about it. So I'd like to think we're going to make a lot of headways, because that has trickle-on effects to everything else within the travel ecosystem. If you get the airlines operating more efficiently, it's better for the hotels, car rentals, everybody involved, the TMCs, to be sure.
Absolutely. Let's take down that executive slide. And if anyone has a question, they're welcome to go to Travel Again. I'm honored. I've been a policy advisor with that group over the last several months, where we're really focused on consumer confidence and mobility. How do we get mobility back? I'm getting a couple chats over here. Is it time for a cabinet level position for tourism, or a secretary of tourism? I mean, we've just looked at those WTT slides where 10% GBT of our GDP is in travel and tourism. Agriculture is at about 2%. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've advocated for that for years, because it is the GDP impact of tourism, business travel, leisure. It's enormous. And just that number is staggering when you think about it. And the jobs and the taxes that's represented with that revenue involved. I would love to see it. Oh, and by the way, since you won't brag on yourself, I know you were talking about being involved with WTTC, but since I love to talk about GBTA as well, Jen did get identified as one of the top 50 women in travel. I call her in top 5, but I want to congratulate you on that. But there's so many women on the call today, and obviously it's a topic of the day about diversity and all the great things that we're focused on. And we've always done well, I think, in this industry anyway. But I love to see such progress being made, and we're blessed to have so many women leaders in this industry. I think we need more, right, Jen? I mean, you're one of the top CEOs in that, but we have to keep working on that. And listen, this morning I was just on with my successor at United, I would say second successor, Doreen Burse, who's the Senior VP of Worldwide Sales at United, and great background at Marriott. And I think she's going to do an incredible job. But we were just chatting about how we're blessed in the travel industry, have many women. We just need to keep pushing on that. And so congrats on that honor, though. I wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Dave. As you know, I'm not real good at taking compliments. I
wanted to mention it because your friends know that as well.
Well, thank you. I think there is the opportunity as we start to come out of this COVID world to say, who's the right team? Not just because you had them in the past. Maybe they don't have the same skill set. And I think Doreen's the perfect example, sort of like Allison Taylor at American as well. Both came from hotel brands. Both understand customer service. Both understand leading people in change. And they didn't have an airline background. So I think I would encourage everyone on this call, either live or listening to it as a recording later, to say, look at your team. Look at your competitors, look at your partners and your suppliers, and recognize that vendors are becoming clients and clients are becoming suppliers, and everyone's not just in that single lane that they were before. And I think that's one of the opportunities that we might get from this.
No, that's great advice, Jen. And hey, it goes a little bit, because I didn't really answer this question well for you, was, when I was hired as the interim executive director at GBTA, obviously people knew I didn't have professional association experience. And you ask, what's the difference? Listen, there's plenty of similarities. It's still a business, and you're trying to find ways to do things smartly, efficiently, have a good positive impact. But the difference is, when you're a corporation, you should listen to your team. You often need to take direction from your senior management, but you ultimately get to make decisions and you move on. when you're dealing with an association, you have a whole litany of constituencies. The one thing I didn't fully appreciate, but now I've come to appreciate and respect and admire is, I mean, you have the chapters and the committees and the advisory boards and the global board. Oh my God, I had so many people that had they had their input and they actually had real, decision-making authority in a lot of cases. And so I had to be far more collaborative maybe than I had to be in the past. And I always try to be that anyway, but I wanted you, that's the difference. I mean, one area you just could kind of make your call and move on. You really had to work it. It's a little like government, I guess.
I think there are a lot of similarities, and I'm going to ask for the TMR team to put in the chat about ASTA, because ASTA as our trade association, as our association of travel advisors, because we pivoted from agents to advisors, we still need you to talk to your representatives on the Hill. And there's a portal. It takes no more than 2 to 3 minutes, but it shows that we are speaking in one voice. And it's important, but it's also hard to get 19, 20 trade associations, whether it's GBTA, WTTC, we're an industry acronyms, USTOA, et cetera, to speak together for the common good. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree on everything, but as leaders, we need to be able to say, these may be the top 3 initiatives. So I really am glad you went back and circled to the point of the difference between being an executive on a publicly traded company versus an association.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm very gratified to have that chance. And GBTA is making a real difference. And hey, listen, we all go through ups and downs, right? Companies, associations, everything.
People.
Right, and people, yeah, of course. And the work they're doing on the networking, which is always key, obviously currently without the events. I'd like to think that'll happen. It's currently scheduled for July in Orlando, the big convention. Whether that time holds, I mean, I think it's going to be an incredible convention. It needs to be, but the advocacy and the education and the research that they do at GBTA, it's wonderful. So again, thanks to everybody that had their patience with GBTA, especially as I took on the challenge in July. And I'm thankful to the staff and the board there, everybody for being so good about it. I think you made a real difference in getting better by the day.
I think you were the right person at the time. And that's where I want to jump into sort of some life lesson questions here. We were just saying, as a leader, as a person, as a friend, as a colleague, there's no normal day. We all have highs and lows, even within the day or the hour. But during a crisis, who do you reach out to when the pressure's on?
Yeah, well, good question, Jen.
Or is the pressure never on for Dave?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's always times, everybody could say you're always happy. I generally am, and I'll tell you why. But when it comes some tough times, I mean, I'm certainly not afraid to call my sister or my mom and my brothers to get a little insight just because of family, but probably a couple of buddies of mine that I go back almost 40 years. And, I knew them since college, even some high school buddies that I will bounce some things off that maybe were outside the industry.
Which is good. It's a safe zone.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's a new hobby or habit in the last 12 months?
Well, I got really good at baking banana bread, which is
okay, good. I was a little worried I had to put the bumpers on this conversation. Well done. Well done. Banana bread. Maybe you can send me a care package. That's good.
Well, you can't screw up banana bread. Seriously, you can throw anything in there. It's going to taste pretty good if you have bananas and sugar.
Okay.
The other thing, I am coaching Marshall's high school golf team, assistant. So that's become kind of a new hobby.
Really?
But I'm definitely enjoying the.
Is it a boys team, a girls team, a co-ed team?
It's a boys team, and my hope is to be able to carry on and earn my spot to coach the girls team down the road. The head coach is a fantastic individual, and so anyway, making progress. I'm honing my coaching skills.
Okay, I love that. What I want to do is jump to some of the questions in the chat right now. And I'm going to read them out as I promised, so you don't have to look at the 162 boxes plus the little box on the bottom right. What do you see the future of hotels are waiting for corporate traveler and meetings to return?
I see only positive opportunities. I mean, again, I realize this is not an easy time. We have Dorothy Dowling, who's amazing, sits on the board of GBTA with Best Western, and she's certainly shared a lot of the sobering statistics, but going forward, I don't care any of the great hotel brands out there. I think there's opportunity to get meetings using those hotel rooms. It might just
like even work from home. I mean, I know a lot of hotels pivoted and have work from home programs now.
Exactly. I mean, I think that was a brilliant move. I know it doesn't work at every hotel, but if you can't invite people over to your house for obvious reasons that they wouldn't be maybe that comfortable, to be able to do that in a hotel setting or at least some of the meeting space. So, again, I think they're going to see great leisure opportunities first. But I think business starts to return this year. I know my buddy Chris Dane said something about what's the timeline. I think we'll see, again, I think you're going to see a steady improvement, 21 versus 20, obviously like almost 10 to 20%.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but once we get to 2024, Chris, I think you're back close to where we were before. And listen, I hope it's before that. I could be wrong. I actually think it'll be a strong recovery.
I hope so.
Trying to be reasonable.
But I mean, this goes right into a great question from Celine in Canada right now that I'm in Montreal, and if travel associations, consortia, governments, et cetera, guide us in a good way, how do we keep clients connected? When's the right time? Are we supposed to advertise, promote, not, et cetera? With no full vaccinations worldwide, no flights from here to most vacation destinations, and sort of bad guidance with quarantine measures, we have to take this into our own hands. And yes, there are some great scripting that goes, but how would you rebuild confidence?
Well, I think it's talking about stories about all the activities that have been done by suppliers. I think the efforts and initiatives, I think it's the first thing is to talk about, hey, once we do get governmental clearance, which is the key in Canada, right? I'm just beside myself because I love Canada. I can't believe the border's been so tight and closed for so long, and then there's discussions about it going forward. But I think as travel advisors, as promoters, we have to talk about all that's being done worldwide and literally go right down the supplier list of all the initiatives. Talk about what even the governments are talking about in terms of the vaccine, the enhancements, the accelerations on the distribution side of it. Again, there's always plenty of bad news, but I think we have to focus on all those.
We have to promote the good news. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, you want to be candid and truthful, but yes, I think you got to be promoting out some of those good things. People can always find the worst news of the day, and so we just got to go down the positive.
I think it's our responsibility to help turn it around. I mean, this summer there was that great study from Harvard on how safe it is to fly on an airplane with the HEPA filters. That was the news of the day. I think we're bombarded with information that we have to take some of these sound bites and constantly reposition them, either in social media, on our websites, on your footer. It's how do we collectively educate?
Yes.
A very specific question from Janet. I'm seeing an increase of passengers looking for extra hand-holding, i.e. airport meet and greeters, to avoid lines, crowds at the airports. Do you believe this will be future in growing the travel? Do you believe this will be growing in the future due to COVID?
Oh, I do. I mean, I think it was already a service that people like. There's a lot of folks that have the means to do it. It may not be every corporate account, but plenty that would, and so maybe for their C-level. But yes, for everybody today, I think there's opportunities. In Janet's company, I know they're very focused on special hand holding, if you will, particularly. And I know, Jen, for your clientele, you have a lot of folks that are willing to pay for a little extra special or separate kind of service, if you will. So no, I think it's probably a very bright future on that.
Hopefully. I see something here that says, I've seen from Stephanie, I've seen leisure agencies get more into incentive travel for companies, specifically to Mexico, Caribbean, and Florida. Any thoughts on that? Or does that sort of go back to, we all don't have to be in a single channel anymore?
Yeah, I don't think you can be across, different segments of the business. I think it's great. If you were just in pure transient leisure, then decided to get into the meetings and incentives, I think incentives actually could be some of the first stuff that comes back, maybe smaller groups, but it's going to these warm weather destinations. It might not, you won't have the 500 person sales meeting, but you might have the 50 top producers. Right. That's how they'll start things out. So I think it's a great area to be in personally.
So do I. I think there's another question tied to opportunities from Craig. We've seen an increase in private jet charters for some of our corporate clients. Do you think this will be a new trend? I.e., do you see that ever being in a budget or a travel policy in the future?
Well, I do for a number of reasons. Again, I think you're already seeing some of that. That's just the wealth of the country in some cases, or people just want for, even before the pandemic situation, maybe security, or they just wanted the privacy and they had the means to do it. But I think the private jet stuff is becoming more available, the ability for the distribution of it, including through the TMCs. And some already do this today, right? But I think that's a real niche, and it's almost like an Uber of, you can almost do it through some of the systems out there. So I think you're going to see a lot more utilization. That's not always great from the commercial transportation side, but I think that's going to be complementary too. And frankly, over time, I think the pie will just get bigger for everybody.
I hope so. So, again, we're going to make this fun in the last couple minutes. Do you have a favorite movie?
Yeah, okay, I have 4 of them. I saw you sent me that note. I love it. I love The American President. I love Family Man. Of course, Shawshank Redemption, doesn't everybody? And then Caddyshack. Nobody be surprised by those.
That's good. I like that. Nice and diverse.
Yes.
Something that I don't often share because I suspect.
How about you? Yeah, what about you on that?
Complicated. Pretty Woman, hands down. I'm a salesperson at heart, but The Dirty Dozen. And if you don't know The Dirty Dozen with Telly Savalas and World War II, I'm a blend of Pretty Woman and Dirty Dozen.
That is impressive. Hey, what's your favorite rock band? I wanted to know. I didn't get to ask you this.
I don't do rock bands well. I really don't, Dave. A lot of people say I was stuck in the 70s and 80s. I won't embarrass myself on that one. So I want to jump to a scary time hero. It's a phrase that I use that entrepreneurs, we know successful entrepreneurs can't control events. What we can do is we control our response to events. And we've talked about luck and timing. But was there anybody personally or professionally who really helped you through the last 12 to 14 months?
Probably my son. I think Marshall said, Dad, you're working so hard. People seem to be okay with what you're doing. I know you're so worried about this. You're trying to do the right things. You're trying to make a real difference and heal a lot of wounds and bring people together. You're doing fine, Dad. I watch you every day. It's not like he was giving me business advice, but it was that real world advice that he didn't even know what he was doing. And I think I just saw him as, wow, okay, I'm going to be okay through this. And
you've done well, Dad. That works. That's good. I like that. I have 1 or 2 more questions, but I also am reading some things in the chat. What are we thinking about? Have you heard any feedback from corporations regarding, quote, requiring or incentivizing vaccinations to return to the office?
Yes, I have. And it's a mixed bag. I mean, On the airline side of it, my old boss, Mr. Kirby, said basically if he could, he would require all the employees of United to get it. Now, whether that happens or not, I think but the fact is, so everybody in that business, and so maybe Ed Bastian feels the same way.
Customer service business, customer facing.
You're right, you're in that business. So, but I've heard plenty of the companies say we would strongly encourage it. We might even provide an incentive, but we don't think we can require it. Personally, if I'm paying you, I think I could require, but I know I'd be strong in that. That would be one where I wouldn't be maybe as amiable or just wishy-washy. I might just say, hey, I need everybody to get a vaccine. We'll
see over the next couple months. Question from Shirley to Dave. How do you think the introducing of a hybrid office or hybrid meeting, which may impact or reduce corporate travel? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable, at least in this first year following this pandemic. I think there's no way around it because there's just some folks that do not feel comfortable or couldn't get the vaccine yet or whatever. So I'm not crazy about it, but I know it's the right thing to do. In fact, you might actually increase participation in some meetings.
That's true. People who never would have come before.
Yeah, but over time, I think you got to be back face to face. It's the human connection. This is wonderful for the moment, but you need everybody in right there together.
Absolutely. So space travel. What do you think? My lifetime, your lifetime?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's ever going to be cheap.
George Jetson, here we come.
Yeah, I think it's happening. I mean, it's going to be great. I hope I get to be a part of it. I hope I don't have to pay $250,000 because I'm not at salary level you are, Jen. I'm just on a fixed income retirement. But what do you think?
I was going to say, I think everyone in the travel space has probably gone to zero salary as owners, or
Yes.
severe discounts from 10 to 70%. And knowing that people have committed to the companies they work for, I say kudos and hugely thanks, not only on behalf of my organization, but on behalf of many.
I know you
Yes,
did. I know
there
you
are
did.
a couple of space options out there. It is in the 200 to 500,000 range. I don't see it as a commodity in my life particularly, but I think it's great. We're going to the next frontier.
I agree.
I think that's really important. Okay, we're coming in on the final 2 to 3 minutes. Dave, I know a lot of people joke that you sometimes might behave like you're 25, which is a compliment. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Well,
that's
there's
clean
many
and you stay on
that
the
I
record.
can say on
That
here.
you can say on this.
Yeah, I got you. I think it's enjoy every minute. And, you know, in all seriousness, I really have tried to enjoy every minute on the planet. I know that's said to everybody, but as you know, Jen, when I lost my first wife, Tracy, to breast cancer, it's already been 10 years ago. And, you know, everybody says this and, hey, be thankful and be grateful. But until you actually really go through something like that, you say it and you try to believe it, but you just carry on and you let little things bother you and the frustrations. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in day-to-day life. Of course it will in business or personal, but I think I learned from that. No, I really just don't know how much time. So every day I just try to appreciate every minute. I realize some of it's going to be phenomenal. Some's going to be a little frustrating, but enjoy every second. And that's what I've done. And that's what I tell my 25-year-old self then. Hey, do smell the roses. You can be going 1,000 miles a minute, but make sure you really understand you're lucky to be on the planet. So enjoy every second.
I could not agree more. What place is on your upcoming travel bucket list?
Well, better be Australia. I would be in trouble with my wife, and I didn't say that.
After Australia.
Yeah, after Australia. You know, I talked about the Maldives one. I've never been to the Maldives. I think
I've been and it's beautiful. The atolls are fantastic and can't wait to book that trip for you.
I gotta go. So that's one of those. How about you, by the way?
I went through an exercise during this period of time where I counted the number of states I've been to and the countries, and I've been to 57 countries, and I made an A to Z list, very Jennifer-like, of when things open. For me, my happy place is Scotland. I can't wait to get back and play some golf. But when the other borders open, I still want to get to Bhutan. I want to get to Belize. I'm an explorer. I always have been and I always will be. I want to see other cultures and recognize that travel gives us the power to connect individuals, to see different religions and histories and cuisines and cultures. And that's what I miss most about the last few months.
Yeah, beautifully said. Absolutely.
And we're at 2:00, so we are right on. We nailed the landing. Dave, this was such a pleasure. Many people know that I do a gratitude journal every night, and this will be one of the opportunities that TMR gave us to be able to have this conversation here today. Big virtual hug.
Yes, to you as well. Thank you. You're an incredible host. Love the questions. Thanks to everybody that stayed on through all this. Really appreciate everybody's time. Can't wait to see everybody in person. And thanks again to TMR.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Anne Marie. Hope this is what you were looking for. And maybe when travel comes back, we can do a round 2.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
See you, everybody. Have a great holiday.
Indeed.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.